I'm sure many of you viewers on the internet already know that Megaman 11 is coming soon next year. Yep, classic Mega Man is coming back, folks. Going back to its 2D roots, only much more updated graphics, no longer in 8-bit, but still has that same Mega Man flow. And thank goodness they finally gave him back his charge shot and slide, which is very questionable as to why they did that in the first place for Mega Man 9 and 10. Not that they're bad games or anything, it's just questionable as to why they strip him of his moves. But I'm sure you also know that the announcement of an updated Mega Man X collection, this time from Mega Man X1 all the way to X8. But no acknowledgement of the next game I'm reviewing, which is Mega Man X Command Mission. Now, why is that? Is it because it's an RPG? I mean, I know it's a change of genre, but it still has Mega Man X in the title. There's no reason for Capcom to not acknowledge this game, the two Extreme games, or even Maverick Hunter X. I mean, they already made the mistake, or rather one mistake, of Legacy 1 and 2, that they didn't include Mega Man in base for some reason. Again. But if they would do so, hopefully it's not the Screen Crunch version, cause, yeah. Less said about the Screen Crunch version, the better. But not including Mega Man X Command Mission into the collection? Well, hopefully Capcom will do the right thing soon, the same way Insomniac did when they did the Ratchet & Clank collection, in which the Ratchet & Clank collection did have just the first 3 games, but then the 4th game, Ratchet Deadlock, eventually got its own solo HD re-release. So hopefully Capcom will do the same thing with this game. Now anyway, Mega Man X Command Mission. Are the mechanics good? Is it easy to manage? And what about the overall quality? Is it really polished? Well, let's boot this game up and find out. Here is my review of Mega Man X Command Mission. Like X7, I've also seen the trailer of Command Mission, only this time, although it is an RPG, this game rejuvenated my interest for the X series as the use of 3D is better utilized in the genre, more so than the frustration that is Mega Man X7. And holy cow, and take it from me, for today's generation of gamers, especially for the new SW console, take it from me folks, X7 will make you suffer heavier than I have. Anyway, the timeline of Mega Man X Command Mission is actually quite debatable. Some say it's after X7 but before X8, and some say it's after X8. Even I don't know where it lies in. But let's boot up the game and let's look at the plot anyway. Years have passed since X7 or X8, depending on what source you believe is true. The Maverick Hunter HQ Eastern Division, led by Colonel RoNep, is in need of assistance to stop the uprising of Reploids who call themselves the Rebellion, led by its leader, Epsilon. So Cygnus deployed X, now in a different body, Zero, who remains the same, and Axel, who just recently promoted to Class S to assist RoNep. Days after their arrival, RoNep deployed X, Zero,
and one of Red's subordinates named Shadow to search the Lograno ruins where Epsilon has been last spotted. Once inside, things seemed too quiet until an old reactor fell off, separating the team temporarily, but both sides are going through their own investigations in the ruins, thus starting the game. As in many RPGs, random battles occur and you take on whatever enemies come in your way. By defeating them, you'll gain experience points in order to level up your character. Very basic stuff. You have different attacks, and because we're playing the PlayStation 2 version, X is your standard attack, which ends your turn, and square and circle buttons for your sub-weapons, which uses weapon energy, depending on the sub-weapon equipped. Your weapon energy is located next to your HP, and it generates itself whenever one of your characters is up next to make an attack. Each character has their own action trigger, which is their signature move and can be activated at 50% weapon energy or more, and I'll explain each character as we move along. For X, his action trigger is Charge Shot, which can be charged up to the amount of when the trigger is activated, and at 100% energy is a guaranteed critical hit and guard break. When not in battle, you can open up the menu where you could equip support items called Force Medals to help the stats of your character. Unfortunately, you'll have to be careful on what you equip because if you go past that character's immunity, it is a surefire way of that character to gradually lose HP each turn in battle unless you balance it out. As both hunters are searching the ruins, they come across different capsules that are open, with X discovering that one of them is Epsilon, who is described to be unstable over the rest of the other Reploids. You'll eventually run into these white capsules, which are your save points, and it is advisable to do so because as simple as some of the mechanics may be, there will be some instances that you'll find yourself in the jam if you're not prepared at all. X and Zero rendezvous only to trigger your first boss battle, the Hippopressor, whose deadly attack is the missile on its back, which you need to destroy first. In battle, you can bring up the battle menu and select Sub-Tank to heal yourself. Bear in mind that the Sub-Tank can run out very quickly, so use it wisely. Zero is the melee fighter, and should enemies block shot attacks, combat attacks can break them. His action trigger is Command Arts, which you have to input commands for a barrage of slashes. The more energy he has, the more time you have to input the attack desired. Each character also has stronger forms called Hyper Mode, which not only change their appearances but also give them a boost in stats, which is very useful in boss fights. Unfortunately, they don't last long, and when their limit is done, it cools down automatically unless you use an item called Gain Hyper to prolong one's Hyper Mode. X's Hyper Mode is the Crossfire armor, which is fire-based and has its own charge attack called the Charge Collider, while Zero dons the Black Zero armor, which doubles his attack power and gains more weapon energy each turn. FYI, there are no Dr. Light capsules in this game. Perhaps the one flaw of the battle system is the experience system. In games like Final Fantasy, whatever experience points you gain in battle, each character will get that amount. Command Mission follows the way of Breath of Fire, Capcom's RPG series, in that the amount of experience gained, it is divided among the number of party members, making battles so tedious, and they shouldn't do it that way. Upon reaching the top of the tower, they find Shadow, who then found Epsilon. Just as they were going for the arrest, Shadow turns on them, saying that he's actually on Epsilon's side, and they're not alone. Enter the Rebellion cadre: Ferrum, Botos, and Scarface. X rescues Zero from Ferrum's grasp, only for Zero to be shot away into the ocean by Shadow. With no other options, X makes a hasty dive into the ocean. The next morning, X wakes up fully recovered by a Resistance member who tells X that he's in Giga City's resistance base called New Hope that is actually under the control of the Rebellion, with Wild Django at the helm of the Central Tower's main control room. X comes across a bounty hunter Reploid named Spider who is after X's head in order to earn money from Django. But after a short battle, X was able to make his escape and explore more of the Central Tower, where he comes across a Resistance member named Ale, who is trying to rescue his boss, Chief R, who is held hostage. Knowing of X's reputation and knowing how he has only a short time left, Ale gave his ID badge to X in hopes that he'll save Chief R on his behalf, as Rebellion soldiers are closing in, with Ale self-destructing himself to stop them and save X. X makes it to the cell, only to drop the ID after being cornered by Spider, who after hearing Ale's name by X, has a change of heart and decided to help X and turn against Django. X makes it to Chief R, only to be eavesdropped by Django, who not only held Spider hostage, but also set the place to explode unless the master computer is stopped, forcing X to make a mad dash to the main control room. Thankfully, the timer automatically stops whenever you enter battle, so you can take the time to destroy your enemies until that point. After stopping the sequence, X makes it to the top of the tower, only for Django to be too much for him. Suddenly, Spider shows up in time to save X and begin the boss battle. Django has advantages on speed and has powerful thunder attacks, so hopefully you have equipped some good force medals on X before the match. I should also mention that unlike any other X game, X doesn't gain the ability of a defeated Maverick, and the Maverick's weakness system depends on 3 elements: weak against thunder, water, or in Django's case, fire, which X can do with his crossfire armor. This kind of weakness system is actually used on the Mega Man Zero series. Spider's main weapon is throwing cards, although not as slick as Gambit, but each card has a special ability at 75% energy, whether it's an increase in experience, currency, or can attack multiple enemies in one attack on that state. His action trigger is Fortune card, where he deals a hand of poker and his luck depends on how high his energy is. But I could never deal a good hand considering that I don't know jack squat about poker. His hyper mode is Trickstar, which renders himself invincible against literally everything, but sadly only lasts 2 turns, and only useful if all other hyper modes have been exhausted. After the match, Chief R thanked both men, with Spider claiming to have known Ale previously prior to his career as a bounty hunter. You can actually take this time to check out shops in Giga City for any weapons, status healing items, or force medals that you can equip, because this game can get hard really fast, especially in the next mission. And you can also revisit locations from previous chapters for any missed items. Chapter 3 is when X and Spider infiltrate Tiana Camp, basically Alcatraz or Guantanamo Bay for Reploids. It's there that Chief R's navigator, Nana, has been held captive and forced to work by the rebellion's warden, Silverhorn, who is based on a Triceratops. Upon arrival, they come across a huge green Reploid calling himself Steel Massimo, who seems to be in shock at first, but toughens up and joins the group, with Spider responding that he has heard about Massimo being a great hero to the Resistance. Once you have 3 members in the party, you can unleash Final Strike, which happens upon depleting between 75 to 90% of the enemy's defensive gauge, which is followed up by button mashing until the enemy breaks down. Very useful if you want to get rid of one irritating enemy off your back. Steel Massimo is essentially your power type character and not exactly a very useful one. For one thing, he can only equip 2 force medals and has less than stellar resistance against any elemental attacks, and his attack accuracy can be questionable at times. But on the flip side, he is great at breaking barriers. His action trigger is Berserk Charge, and all you have to do is just keep mashing the buttons within the allotted time in order to increase power, add status effects, and or increase critical hit rate, followed by a huge laser beam firing out of his armor. His hyper form is Glint Armor, which is pure gold and gets all boost of stats, except for speed sadly, because it would have helped otherwise if he did have increase in speed as well. Just like many prisons in video games, Tiana Camp is quite the maze. You want to try to avoid these security units that, if they detect you, you'll be sent back to a spawning point and forced to try to sneak by again. You also have to activate consoles that will unlock all the cells in the prison, but be warned, some of the prisoners in those cells are just enemies in disguise waiting to put a bullet on your head. Eventually, they rescued Nana from her bonds, but decided to remain in the dark room in order to help the Resistance navigate the deeper areas of the prison, but not before telling the group that the Steel Massimo that's with the party is someone else donning the name, as she explained that the real Massimo was on solitary confinement 10 days past and is scheduled for execution days later after refusing to aid Silverhorn. Later parts of the prison has you playing Simon Says, but it's imperative that you follow exactly what Nana says. Failure to do so can result in unexpected battles that you really don't want at this point. While Nana is unlocking the last door to Silverhorn, Massimo takes the time to check out the cell where the real Massimo was chained, with the latter giving him encouragement to accept the armor and carry out his will to help stop the rebellion. Just then, Nana was recaptured and was about to be killed by Silverhorn until the hunters intervened. Even with water resistance, it's better if you keep on farming for experience points because Silverhorn's attacks hit hard, especially his tidal wave attack. You best make sure you have Thunderbuster equipped as crossfire armor is not that effective in this fight. Also, once Massimo reaches 100%, it's better to use Action Trigger and use his Glint armor if it feels like the match is almost done. Next is Chapter 4, where the Resistance needed to recruit a force metal scientist and engineer named Professor Godil, who is modeled after a platypus, after reports of a new invention he made. However, Nana believes that persuasion won't be easy as he's doing everything he could to distance himself from Giga City, the Rebellion, or even the government. Either way, X is determined to undertake this mission. By this time, you now have access to the deployment center where you can send various mechanoids to previous locations to find anything from currency to artwork for the game's Sky Room, which is your personal lounge, and keys associated with that dungeon, which you'll need to find secrets that are very important. And it's from Chapter 4 and onwards that you'll find some deactivated mechs that you can send back to Nana to get it working again by just interacting with it. Although there are some that's missing some components that you'll have to find them in another location and return back later, like this Einhammer that's missing a ball and chain hammer. You're better off collecting these mechanoids and deploying them in various locations at the same time, as it'll take so much time before they return with whatever goods they can find. As the team are exploring Godil Labs, it seems that they're not alone. It's at this point of the game in which enemies will do everything they can to defend themselves, especially those Metools, a very common Mega Man series trope, and there are some enemies that will try to summon backup, prolonging the battle, so you better remember who does so and take them out the next time around. Godil is by no means unprepared, so his lab also has security panels that, when touched, will trigger a fight. Only by dashing you can avoid them. Further in the lab, the Resistance come across a maverick scientist named Dr. Psyche, who is also after Godil on Epsilon's behalf. However, the Doctor escapes, leaving X and the group to take out his men, while at the same time, the female thief named Marino was about to raid a storage room, only to find another female Reploid in a nurse motif named Cinnamon. Marino is searching for a treasure that generates metals known as the Force Metal Generator. At the same time, Godil is encountered by Psyche, who both had some history, and Godil refuses to cooperate with the Rebellion or anybody into making weapons of mass destruction, making Godil the only animal-based Reploid in the series to never go Maverick. Psyche easily deduced Godil created the Force Metal Generator onto a Reploid for safekeeping, which turns out to be Cinnamon herself. Psyche and his troops manage to ambush Marino, damaging her, and Cinnamon does everything she could to repair Marino before she herself gets abducted. Godil Laboratory also has an Eternal Forest, where you fight some waves of enemies depending on the route you choose. Blue arrows have weaker enemies, while red arrows take you to stronger enemies. I decided to take Godil's advice and just take the blue arrow path 2 times just to get the forest over with.
It is also advisable that right after you're done with Chapter 4, it's better to go back to Godil Laboratories and try out the Eternal Forest at your own leisure, because not only will you find really good items, but it's also a good place for you to actually grind for experience points, because trust me, you'll actually want to get more points if you want to survive the later chapters.
After the forest, the group encountered and recruited Marino, who just recovered from her injuries, and it's at this point of the game that you can rotate between characters in a battle, should one be low on HP just like the last game. Also taking a page from Breath of Fire 4, after a battle, both frontline and reserve characters get experience points, which makes grinding even more tedious as after battle experience points is split by the number of party members. As a thief, Marino has an advantage on speed, but low on power and defense, as it is a common trope with speed-type characters. Her action trigger is Emotional Reel, which works like a slot machine, and if 3 same symbols match, she can either deal good damage, or in this case, 3 treasure symbols is guaranteed a 100% item steal, which is very much what I use her for in certain enemies. Her hyper form is Quicksilver, and not the Marvel Universe character. This form gives her some increase in HP and attack power, but quadruples in speed, and is guaranteed a turn most of the time or often until her form cools down. The group soon caught up to Psyche, who decides to let Cinnamon go so that he can take him down by himself first. He'll start off with floating needles on his side, and what's weird about that is that they can either attack you or benefit you in battle, as Psyche can accidentally increase the character's stats. It's advisable not to use any hyperforms in this fight because of what will happen next. He then goes to his true form called Mad Nautilus, and he's one of the most irritating Mavericks to fight. He's mostly shielded, and whenever you attack him while in defense mode, he'll counterattack and his attack output is really high. Your only chance of hurting him is when he performs his signature move called Mad Ecstasy. Only then will his core be exposed, and you better attack him now with your hyperforms before he closes the core on his next turn. And when he does, immediately shut off your hyperforms until his core is exposed again. After the match, Cinnamon decided that she'll fight alongside X, much to Goldeal's surprise, but caves in after he accepts the fact that running away from the rebellion is not a good option, and with Cinnamon's aid, you now have access to the FMG menu. This menu shows you the various force metals that you can refine and create for battle. However, there are some stipulations on creating recipes and refining them. First, Cinnamon has to be in a specific level. The party has to fulfill certain conditions for the recipe to appear, such as fighting a number of battles, defeating certain enemies, or raising enough total experience points in the entire party. And finally, have enough Force Metal Energy, or FME, by winning battles. However, there are a few Force Metals that do matter, but we'll get to it soon. As for Cinnamon herself, since her motif is that of a nurse, she's practically your healer. Her action trigger is Angelic Aid, where you have to rotate the right analog stick very fast in order to form hearts on the screen. And the more hearts form, more HP will be restored, essentially making her like a substitute E-tank just in case your sub-tanks ran out. Her hyper mode is Iron Maiden, which only gives her twice the HP and attack power and nothing else. Definitely my least used character, as I only use her to create force metals. Back at the base, X was able to get some communication from RoNeps, who said that Zero has been spotted somehow before losing feed. While Nana was able to pinpoint the location, X wonders where Spider was during the broadcast. X and the group decide to check out the Olfat factory, only to be greeted by flying security mechs, which will automatically trigger a fight if they catch you moving while they move themselves. I made sure I didn't get caught, as I would rather proceed with the factory without any enemies bothering me. Further down the factory, the group comes across a random Reploid who seems to know X, and upon showing his true form, it's Axel from X7, only sounding much better than before. Not wanting to stick around at Maverick Hunter East, Axel deployed himself on his own accord in search of clues relating to his origins and his chameleon ability, but found nothing. Regardless of such, he joins X in the search for Zero. Axel starts off with his twin pistols, but later in the game will he be able to use some special guns that are effective against certain enemy types, and he's the second fastest character after Marino. He stated back in X7 that he can only shapeshift to Reploids his own size, but it's a different case in Command Mission, as his action trigger, DNA Change, can have Axel become that defeated Maverick and use that defeated Maverick's signature move, such as becoming Silverhorn and attack with Tidal Wave. His hyper mode is Stealth Mode, which is basically Spider's Trickstar form, only without the slight speed decrease, and is one of the characters I use to build hyper items to prolong his form due to his usefulness in boss fights. Perhaps my most hated area of the factory is the conveyor belt room, as you need to flip switches in order to find the right path to take. Sadly, no matter where you go, you'll find yourself fighting Prion units, and they hit very hard. Or rather, the later ones do. My advice is that if one of them has a Nurse Prion unit, try to attack the others while sparing only the Nurse Prion in order to heal all the characters as demonstrated for free. A cutscene plays with a Maverick named Mach Gentra, based on a Swallow, trying to get his invention up and running, only to be interrupted by Zero and are about to fight one-on-one. After that stupid conveyor belt room, X and the group saw bodies of Mavericks with saber wounds, which is no doubt Zero's handiwork. Just as Gentra is about to off Zero, X and Axel came just in time to save him, reuniting the Class S Maverick Hunters. The group then pursued Gentra to another room where his invention, the Debor, is activated, and has the ability to infinitely mass-produce Prion units. You'll want to make sure you take down some of his Prion units before taking on Gentra, but you best be sure that your shot-type characters are well equipped, especially X with his Ice Buster, as you need them to stun Gentra down to the ground before he recovers in his next turn. Once he's grounded, Unleash your hyper modes against him and cool down once he starts flying again. After Gentra dies, the fight is not over yet, as the Dubar is still mass-producing more Prions for you to fight. After the 4th wave of Prions, Axel morphs into Mach Gentra just in time not only to tell Dubar to stop producing, but gave time for X and Zero to destroy it completely. Once that's done, they return to base with X introducing the resistance to Zero. However, things turned sour when Zero brushed off the resistance out of the assumption that they would eventually turn Maverick in the same vein as Shadow, as X and Axel are the only allies he could ever trust, and decided to find Shadow on his own and end it personally. The group got a transmission again from RoNep, saying that he found a facility where the rebellion is striking next, the Gimiala mines. Mines that are said to be rich in some special metals. After the feed, X noticed something glowing and turns out to be just Spider. I wonder if... Anyway, the group proceeded to the mines, but unbeknownst to them, Shadow is waiting and stalking them. The Gimiala Mines is one of the few places where you can attempt to steal items from good enemies such as silver metals and sell them for cash, because you'll definitely need them, and hopelessly try to grind experience from these fire blobs. And what I mean by hopelessly is that if you attack them with fire attacks, not only will they power up from it, but also increase their experience points after the match. But the real problem with that is that more often, if not all the time, they always freaking escape! As if these guys know what your plans are and said, "Oh, you're powering us up with experience points? Sorry, late for an appointment. Hasta la vista, idiota!" I swear, it's a real pain to grind against these guys, but it's the only way for me to level up my team faster. But even then, with more members means more experience divided. Once Basement 3 is open, the group is greeted by Shadow, who tells the group about his enhancement via the Supra Force Metal, which is said to be stronger than your average Force Metal. In the first round, try to conserve your hyperforms as much as you can while also keep attacking him to prevent him from using his shoulder cannon. Just as Shadow gets the upper hand, Zero shows up for the assist, and for the second round, unleash your hyper modes against him as he has no advantages with any element. After the match, Zero advises X to come out of his merciful side as it will be troublesome in the long run. Shadow, in his last legs, attempts to sniper attack Zero, only for Spider to take the bullet and destroy Shadow for good. Zero still denies any assistance from anybody, but Spider explained he only did so because he feels like it and to show how powerful friendship can be if they wish to stop the rebellion's plans, thus earning Zero's respect. Continuing with the third basement, you'll see different colored miners, and the puzzle is that you have to give the right colored pickaxes to their correct owners and give the electrical components to the Reploid foreman in order to access basement 4, where the boss is waiting. Before you enter the boss room, you need to defeat the 3 guardians, which are basically the elemental blob enemies, and once you do, the boss room is open for you to enter. But it's better to escape back to the base via the save point, and be sure to have different elemental weapons for your chosen characters because it'll be a tough fight. Inside the boss room awaits the Maverick Incentus, based off an Egyptian Sphinx, who explains that the reports of a Force Metal lab in the mines are just misinformation to trap and kill the group, and is also powered up by a Supra Force Metal stronger than Shadow's. The challenging part of Incentus is his ability to change elements each turn, followed by an elemental attack that are the strongest, that not even resist metals can help that much, and has his own move called Asura Knuckle. Think of the Asura Knuckle as more like Dave Grohl's hand in the Foo Fighters Everlong video, only it can bat slap multiple allies all in one turn, flinching them as well. After the match, Incentus activated a 5-minute self-destruct sequence, and all attacks from the resistance can't open the door. Just as Incentus is about to escape, Spider grabs him by the throat and confirms that the energy of 2 Reploids should provide enough force to open the door and escape, with Spider sacrificing himself as a result. Once back at the base, Zero apologizes to the resistance of accusing them as possible Mavericks, and driven by Spider's sacrifice, decided to assist their cause in stopping Epsilon and avenge Spider. Right now, it's difficult for them to get through RoNeps due to radio interference, and Nana pinpoint the only location to stop it is in the Vanalia Desert. Hopefully by this time, Your deployment team should give you the Lograno key so that you can have access to the secret room in the ruins where the 3 merchants that you saved at the start of the game have set up shop and sell really good weapons, albeit more expensive. Which hopefully you'll have enough cash because Chapter 7 and onwards will have much tougher enemies to fight. In the Vanalia Desert, you'll find some jammers that are easy to navigate just by following the direction of the wires. But the main entrance has lights that all you just need to do is just run straight into it. To trigger the cutscene, interact with the door first, indicating that it's locked. Then move away from the door, and it's in this cutscene that they are greeted by Ferrum, and the group is ready to attack, only for X and Massimo to be slowly sucked inside the quicksand. Despite pleas to let go, Zero refuses to lose another ally as Ferrum continuously whips him until he too was sucked inside the quicksand. Unbeknownst to Ferrum is that they landed on solid ground, or in this case, underneath a Maverick base. The first part is an underground maze where you have to find colored switches in order to unlock some gates until you come across an elevator which leads to the upper floors. Once you reach the first floor, it's better to go south first just to unlock the door from the inside, and trust me, because you'll likely be unprepared, and this will be a good time to go back to base and restock with whatever items or weapons you need. You'll be guiding a series of lasers that will unlock certain rooms until you find a control panel that unlocks all rooms, as well as stopping the signal jamming, resulting in Botos generously opening the 3rd floor to access on the elevator room. The match against Botos has got to be the most pathetic out of the whole game, if not the entire X series, and he goes down easily against water-type weapons. He'll only attack you if he has at least 1 drone with him, and they can be taken out easily with Axel's DNA change as Silverhorn, and Zero focusing on Botos. Yeah, Botos doesn't have any solo attacks when he's all alone. After the match, Botos drops his Super Force medal and manages to make an escape. Back in the base, Gaudil examines the metal, confirming that such power is possible by refining state-of-the-art metals, and the only other place he knows of such supply is at the Melda Force Metal Refinement Plant, which is likely the Rebellion has set their shop next. As the Resistance are infiltrating the plant, they see a peephole and snapshot an image of some structure. Gaudil finds something familiar about the structure they found, and with enough snapshots, he concludes that the weapon the Rebellion is making is a nuclear warhead, using the Super Force metal as the energy source. The Rebellion's plan was to launch the nuclear warhead, and when it lands, the immense energy that comes out of the explosion will cause every single Reploid to become Mavericks. As they are heading to the warhead silo, they come across Botos again, who warns them that despite their knowledge of the warhead, he stated that 2 keys are needed to open the warhead tip and remove the metal. However, after a very easy match, it turns out his defeat was just a ruse in order to lure the hunters into a trap. Sure enough, Botos keeps sending weaker clones of himself to stall for time until they come across Ferrum. Unlike Mach Gentra, Ferrum stays in the air all the time, and her evasion against combat attacks are really high. So have at least X and Axel handle the shooting, while also have Marino use her action trigger to steal Build Hyper, because heaven knows you'll need it. After the match, Ferrum falls down to the ground floor, which means a long journey back, and backtracking is the irritating part of this dungeon, as more often than not, you'll always have random encounters in a matter of seconds. As the pursuit for Ferrum continues, Botos finds Ferrum all damaged and demands for her key to open the warhead and retrieve the metal, which happens to be within Ferrum herself. Showing his true nature, Botos rips the key out of her and leaves her for dead. The hunters find out that Botos had already got the key out of Ferrum, so it's up to them to reach the top of the warhead to stop Botos. However, Botos got up there first and was about to run off with the metal and betray everyone, even Epsilon, until some shadowy figure appears before him. Once the hunters arrived, it was too late. Botos was killed, and the Super Force metal on the warhead was gone. With no other recourse, the group heads back to base, with a feed from RoNep saying that his forces will lend support en route to Giga City, but an alarm goes off with a warning that Giga City is under rebellion attack again. The hunters took the Airbus and immediately encountered Scarface, who is invading the city to get the Super Force medal, not knowing that someone else had bit them to it prior. Not only does Scarface have really powerful thunder attacks, but his defensive strategies are random because there's no indication whether or not he's defending himself against combat or shot attacks. Just be sure your team has thunder resist and fire-based weapons for this match, and have X go into crossfire armor as soon as possible to finish him off. Once that's done, Scarface will withdraw for now, but not before conversing with the team about the ideals that he and Epsilon were after. X realizes that Scarface doesn't seem too power-hungry to use the medal for himself, but is still confused as to what the true motive is. Scarface explained that Epsilon's ideal is a Reploid-only nation, much like any other faction in past games that tried to do so and failed. Chief R was able to confirm where Scarface had retreated back to, and it's in an isolated area called Glacier, a Reploid testing facility which is currently under Rebellion control. You're free to do what you like, but it's better to take the time now to deploy more mechanoids until you have both the Melda and Tiana keys, because of 2 secret weapons you'll definitely need if you want to survive the final chapters. But be very well equipped because these hidden boss fights are no pushovers. If you have the Tiana key, go back to Tiana camp and keep descending until you reach Maze Area 1 and open the locked door with it. Behind the door, you'll find a Reploid named Rafflesion, named after a plant, a self-made super idol who is angry that you disturbed her dance rehearsal, and unfortunately she's not alone. Accompanying her are 2 Belladonnas, and they're just as powerful as Rafflesion. Whatever you do, attack only one enemy at a time, preferably take out only Rafflesion first, but be warned that each damage they take makes them stronger, especially when Rafflesion's signature move, Sunburst, not only can shave off HP on all characters, but his strength is enough to kill your members quickly, as evidenced by Zero and Axel going down hard. You better hope that you used enough build hypers on both Zero and Axel, as well as have enough gain hypers in order to prolong their forms and prevent the team from getting killed completely. Once the idols had their last dance, you are rewarded with X's ultimate armor and Axel's Rafflesion DNA, which is one of the best attacks next to Incentus, but I'll show you the ultimate armor later. Once you have the Melda key, head back to the Melda plant and open the first locked door that you see there. Behind the door, after retrieving a mech, inside are the Duckbill Mole brothers, thieves that work for Epsilon for money and are a cross between a mole and a duck. They spend most of the match using Mega Fire on themselves, not only to regain HP, but also enable some of their deadliest fire moves, so be equipped with any weapon that is water-based before fighting them. Just avoid using the crossfire armor in this battle. Thankfully, these guys are not as bad as Rafflesion and the Belladonnas, as the brothers power down after taking water damage. Now that the 2 thieves are toast, you earn Zero's hidden form called Absolute Zero, and like the ultimate armor, I'll show it later in this video. So it's on to invade the glacier, and the way you can advance is irritating at best, because in the first half, you need to purposefully trigger all the warning lights in the room in order to unlock the doors, and each alarm you stop, you better hurry to trigger the other ones because they don't stay down for very long. Next, you'll be in a room with 2 switches that rotates the room, 3 turns clockwise with the left switch and 2 turns counter with the right switch, and the number you see in the next room determines whether or not you're in the right path or into a battle, with number 3 being the right path to take. Finally, all that's left is to activate 2 control panels to open the door that leads to Epsilon, and when you do so, do remember to save because this will be a 3-round match. The hunters finally cornered Epsilon, but not before telling them that he has another Superforce medal within him, and states he'll use his own medal for the warhead once he disposes them. Just then, Scarface shows up to fight on Epsilon's behalf, but he's much weaker than before, and if you have Thunder Resist on all characters, then fighting him should be no problem. But now you have Epsilon to deal with, and one signature move you can't escape from is the Meta Crush, in which he'll pull a character in and deal an attack that leaves him or her in just 1 HP, and has good thunder attacks that deal about 1000 damage. Fortunately, his turn speed is not that high, so you should be able to attack or heal yourself before he makes another move. However, once he uses Omega Drive, his Super Force medal will go into overdrive, restoring all of his HP, increasing all of his stats, and has auto regenerate, which makes it the perfect time for your hunters to go into their hyper modes. I first activated X's ultimate armor, and holy freaking cow, X is really packing heat, even more so than his X4 through 6 ultimate armor, And I'm glad he has a jetpack behind him because I doubt he can even walk at all with it. The armor's action trigger is the Nova Strike, but not one in the traditional sense like the past games. Instead, it's very much a one-man final strike, and all you need to do is just keep mashing the buttons and the damage increases with more weapon energy stored. Then I got Zero to become Absolute Zero, and goodness, his design and attacks look so awesome. I never understood why Capcom didn't take advantage of this form in Marvel vs. Capcom or Namco's Project Cross Zone. All of Absolute Zero's attacks are ice and water based, hence the name, and his action trigger is Calamitous Arts. Has you inputting commands to damage your target, and man is it very satisfying. With Epsilon down, the hunters retrieved his Super Force Medal and gave it to RoNep. He then commended the hunters for a mission well done, and will be summoning an aircraft to pick all three of them up soon. Just as the hunters are about to say their farewells, an airship sent by RoNep suddenly attack, killing Chief R and are ambushed by numerous drones. Just then, RoNep is at another tower at Giga City, sending a message that the Resistance are the real Mavericks and are planning to take over the city, which is not really true. Not one to back down, the Resistance are willing to get to the bottom of it by storming the tower RoNep is in. Fortunately, all the citizens are still on your side and are willing to help your cause, so you can take this time now to buy weapons and items before the final battles. Just like any other Mega Man game, you have to face the dead Mavericks again, but by this point, you have X and Zero's strongest forms, and you can talk to the nurse anytime to restore everything. Mad Nautilus, however, is still a different story, so just follow the strategy during your first match with me. Once that's done, your next opponent is one of Colonel RoNep's lieutenants named Depth Dragoon, who strangely enough doesn't like fire, and the crossfire armor is effective against him. But why bother with that armor when you have ultimate armor anyway, right? After the match, visit the nurse one more time, because once you reach RoNep, it is then the point of no return. Once they encountered RoNep, it turns out that the whole time, the hunters were just being set up by RoNep, but before he can explain, RoNep starts attacking, but hey, no problem. Again, ultimate armor and Absolute Zero. Zero is confused about what purpose they have at being at Giga City in the first place, especially after having to witness the loss of both Chief R and Spider. However, RoNep extended his mind games with Zero upon morphing himself into Spider and attacked Zero. After all, RoNep is Spider spelled backwards. There are some debates as to who or what Spider really is. Some sources say that there was a Reploid named Spider who perished somehow and RoNep got his DNA, while other sources say that Spider was just a camouflaged body he created within himself to fool the hunters and pretending to make them believe that he is Aile's friend, despite the two never actually knowing each other in the first place. The whole reason he planned this mission was to have the Super Force medals and rule the world as the ruler of all Reploids. Yeah, just like many other dictators tried to do so. And just for an FYI, Sigma is not at all in this game. No mentions of it either. The hunters follow RoNep to his final spacecraft, and before the fight, the hunters can confirm the fact that Epsilon knew that the power of the Super Force medals would give the possibility of turning Maverick, meaning that Epsilon wasn't a Maverick from the start. As Epsilon wanted to establish a Reploid-only nation, but he has no intention of harming humans at all, and that the hunters were just used to do his dirty work so that RoNep can make a clean getaway. Soon after, RoNep becomes Great RoNep with over 1 million HP and Super Force medals on his shoulders that can attack and shield him. The first round is a scripted battle, so don't waste your hyperforms just yet, and instead have Marino use item steal on just RoNep himself to steal Fragment Alpha. And do your best to just survive, especially against his signature move called Memento Mori, which inflicts every single status effect in the game. It seems like the hunters are on the ropes and are about to be killed, when all of a sudden, Ferrum stole away on the ship and attempts to take the medal out of RoNep. However, the force of RoNep's laser attack on Ferrum was strong enough that it inadvertently detached itself from his shoulders, losing his shields and reducing his HP to 75,000. In the final round, have Marino steal Fragment Beta out of RoNep, and when it's done, unleash all the hyperforms on him to finish him off. Once that's done, RoNep makes his final speech, pondering about the future of Reploids before dying. In the final scene, the spaceship is about to enter the atmosphere, but not before a reformed Ferrum, holding the Superforce medal, jumps away instead of joining the hunters inside the ship. To end it all, Ferrum used her energy to destroy both herself and the medal, causing an aurora as Nana was watching the sky waiting for their return. The hunters arrived in the middle of the ocean, safe and sound, and it was now reported that Epsilon's name is cleared, ending Megaman X Command Mission. After the credits, you are rewarded with a central key, and you get to save the game to restart Chapter 10, so you can go through the same battles again to grind for more experience points, and it's around this time that I started grinding to get the Force Medal Monopoly, in which all the experience points after the battle goes to the one equipped with it, and it doesn't matter if the character is on the front line or reserve. And I kept grinding for experience points because of the hidden bosses later in the game. The hidden bosses are held in Central Tower Shaft 999F, you dig? And it's in this locked room that you'll encounter a group of foxes called the Tails Clan. Each have a number of tails, but still modeled after a kitsune, a mythical fox. Basically a Matarasu from Akami before Akami was even made, also from Capcom. Each of the Tails Clan play by their own unfair rules. One tail has the strength of normal Redips. The twin two tails can element change like Incentus, only much harder to tell. The three tails trio can heal each other. Four tails is a broken Scarface. The five tails trio are willing to self-destruct to kill you unless you take them all out first. Six tails can heal all, and I mean all HP back by his 10th turn and has over 200,000 HP. The twin seven tails are stronger Belladonnas. The 8 tails gang can summon backup of themselves, prolonging the fight further, and finally, 9 tails can cheat by taking out a member down early. All of these guys share the same signature move, the dreaded and frightening name of Annihilator Hadouken, because Kamehameha is Toei Animation copyright. You need to make sure that the levels on your hunters are high enough and have Axel and Zero use build hypers because fighting them normally is a surefire way of getting your team killed really quickly. Once 9 tails goes down, you're rewarded not only with DNA for Axel, but also the Ancient Gun for Axel, which is very effective against any boss, and it's in the form of a 17th century flintlock pistol, which looks cool, but if it were up to me, I would have instead replaced it with a Colt single action army so Axel can go Revolver Ocelot on everybody. Graphics wise, it's alright. Many of the areas look very flat in design, but then this is Mega Man X and I don't expect it to be like Final Fantasy or Capcom's Breath of Fire games. Also, I can't help but think that X and Zero's respective bodies are too big for their heads, or maybe it's probably just me. Although the cell shading looks nice on all the heroes though. As for the music, unlike X1 through 6, it's mostly bland and not one that I would put on my iPod at all, except maybe for a few tracks. But overall, I actually do enjoy this game though, but I think there are better RPGs than this, but this game is worth checking out.
The way I see it, Megaman X Command Mission is actually a solid RPG. Though it would have been much better if the experience system didn't suck so hard, because I don't like the fact that experience points had to be divided among the number of party members, instead of working the way Final Fantasy did. But I will say the game is nicely polished, the gameplay is rock solid, pun intended for anybody who plays the Japanese version, because rock man. And also, while the plot is average, I think you'll have a good time with this game. Just be ready to grind your characters heavily. With that said, I'm going to give this game an 8 out of 10. And it's actually worth having in your collection, just in case Capcom decides not to give it an HD re-release. Though, hopefully Capcom will do the right thing and actually do so. Because not many people know about the existence of this game right after people played X6 or even people just stopped right after X4. So, giving this game an HD re-release will definitely help. Well, we're almost done with the marathon, folks, and holy cow, when the heck did I start this marathon? Back in September, and we're in the middle of December? Yeah, I'm kind of reminded of Some Call Me Johnny when he actually started the Metal Gear Marathon back in November, and he ended it up finishing it with Metal Gear Solid 5 at the middle of April. So, we're going to go to the end of the marathon with probably the most underrated of the X series, and my second favorite Mega Man X game, Mega Man X8. Now, when I tried the demo that I unlocked in Mega Man X Command Mission, holy heck was I looking forward to this game. And I gotta say, the wait for this game was actually worth it back then. So, I hope you liked this video. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, like my Facebook page, pass it on to your friends for anybody who loves Mega Man. And yeah, stay tuned for my review of Mega Man X8, folks. Until then, this has been Musashi X. I bid you all farewell, take care, and stay tuned.